When my dear late mother addressed your predecessors 7 decades ago, she said that in that age and against the backdrop of international affairs, no nation could live unto itself. It is a source of great pride that in the following decades, Canada has continued to set an example to the world in her conduct and values as a force for good. À vous et à l'ensemble du peuple canadien.
To you and to all the people of Canada, my wife and I wish to extend our sincere thanks for this, the warmest of welcomes.
As the anthem reminds us, the true North is indeed strong and free.
Well, Don the Con has a golden shitter, but we got a royal flush.
You get to see the maple trees, maple sugar on the maple leaves. We got the biggest wheat fields growing tall. In Canada, where we see the reversing falls. In Canada, we get to see them all.
G'day, eh? For the past 3 weeks, while Canada's been preparing for King Charles' arrival and his historic first throne speech, Prime Minister Carney published his mandate letter for the new government after a planning forum with the cabinet members held at Meech Lake last week. Normally, prime ministers would issue multiple mandate letters directed to the cabinet members outlining their roles, but this succinct 800-word mandate letter could signal a true cabinet government under a unified mission, giving ministers more room to put forward their own ideas and initiatives under these 7 priorities. Number 1, renegotiating Canada's relationship with the United States and strengthening our relations with other countries. Number 2, removing interprovincial trade barriers and expediting major infrastructure projects. Number 3, helping Canadians with the cost of living. Number 4, making housing more affordable and catalyzing a modern housing industry. Number 5, building the Canadian military and reinforcing domestic security. 6, refocusing immigration. And 7, reducing the cost of government operations. Carney vowed to make Canada an energy superpower and has stated that he would make ours the strongest economy in the G7 by July 1st, Canada Day.
Dealing with some trade uncertainty with the United States, and our unemployment rate is stubbornly high. So now is a good time to try and stimulate the economy. Now, Mark Carney is no longer the governor of the Bank of Canada, so he does not have the power to change interest rates, but he can set government policy that's going to try and stimulate the economy. And he's done a couple of things. When you implement a tax cut, that's a stimulating policy because people will have more money, and if people have more money, generally they spend more money. The other thing he did is he reversed the previous Liberal government's decision to increase the inclusion rate for taxing capital gains. That idea was taken off the table by Mark Carney and will never be implemented. And raising the inclusion rate on capital gains would be a restrictive policy, and it would particularly target investors that would be investing in Canadian corporations. So that would have been a bad policy to have if you want to stimulate the economy. He's removed that. And he's also talked about Canada Day being the target for eliminating all trade barriers between all provinces. Trade barriers and taxes and rules that the federal government might have in place. And he's also encouraging premiers to work together to eliminate all trade barriers amongst provinces. So those 2 things, let's forget about the capital gains tax change that won't happen, but a tax cut coming on Canada Day and removal of trade barriers within the country by Canada Day, both hitting at the same time, would be a good little stimulus. Now, I have to point out that the Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, also promised a tax cut. And the Conservative tax cut would have been larger than the Liberal tax cut. And there was a lot of rhetoric during the election about a bring-it-home tax cut so that we could all have powerful paychecks that we could bring home to safe houses and safe neighborhoods protected by soldiers and police. Did I get the slogan wrong?
The International Monetary Fund is upgrading the forecast for the Canadian economy, projecting it will now grow by 1.3% this year and by 2.4% in 2025, according to a report released Wednesday. I'm not sure which month I'm quoting here. The growth can only happen if the government reverses government spending and the debt burden, both of which have grown over the past decade. Newly appointed Minister of Energy Tim Hodgson, a former CEO of Goldman Sachs, told Calgary's Chamber of Commerce that both clean and traditional energy would be fast-tracked, promising delivery within 2 years instead of the usual 5-year reviews, with less red tape, more certainty, better outcomes, and it's high time we trade more with people who share our values, not just our borders. Quote. Well, in a powerful move and a show of alignment with those who share our values, Carney first made his hypothetical invitation during his meeting with the King on a trip to Britain and France in March. And just 3 days after being sworn in, he made the invitation again in person for the sovereign to open a new session of Parliament and deliver the throne speech, making it the first time a sovereign has done so since his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, did in 1977, and his first visit to Canada since becoming king. And his acceptance speaks to the urgency of the moment and reinforces the fact that Canada has a steadfast defender in our sovereign. Well, in Canada, the monarch reigns, but he doesn't rule, he or she. We're a constitutional monarchy where the sovereign is our head of state, in a long tradition of strategic partnership. The speech itself is mainly written by the Prime Minister's office, outlining the agenda for the government, and it's usually given on behalf of the King or Queen by the Governor General, who implements the government's policies and performs various ceremonial duties. Governor General Mary Simon says that, quote, "Our Canadian identity is deeply rooted in our Constitution, and this visit highlights the enduring relationship between Canada and the Crown." Justin Volk, V-O-V-K Volk, I think, a Canadian royal historian, told BBC it is a theatrical display that is meant to show what makes Canadians separate from Americans, and not a 51st state. Carney has always been vocal about considering himself a Europeanist. Self a Europeanist. Folks said, in a way, it's a show of force. In general, Canadians are often indifferent or critical of the monarchy, but they understand the chief purpose of the visit was to send a political message to the world. Jeremy Kinsman, former Canadian High Commissioner to the UK, says this was a big deal for the King to do this. Mel Capp, former Canadian Minister and High Commissioner to the UK, tells the BBC, "Symbolically, this is huge. President Trump has a lot of admiration for the monarchy. Even separatist inclined Quebec recognizes the significance of the visit." Former Quebec Premier Jean Charest said, "We're different. We're not the United States. We don't have the same institutions. We don't have the same history. We are a different country with a different choice in terms of how we built ourselves." And King Charles tells that story. Whether the separatists work themselves into a lather over this, frankly, I don't care. I don't think Quebecers care a lot. They may not like the monarchy or whatever they'd like to read into it, but British institutions have served us very well.
We'll be right back right after these words from Herb Digital on our Twitch channel.
What up, Twitch? What up, Twitch? What up, Twitch? It's your boy Herb Digital. Herb Digital. Herb Digital. Hopped out the Bionic 5, now I'm on iRacing Live. When I'm not dunking on incels or smacking racists, I like to settle down with a little music. If you want to catch me racing, ooh, nobody can catch me racing. But if you want to see me racing, follow me. Twitch.tv/politicaldraindigital. Knowledge is power. See, my man's got a problem. Lives by the bottle, that's the way it is. And last but most importantly, practice your Second Amendment rights and learn how to protect yourself and your loved ones. Shit is getting real spooky out there. And your boy Herb Digital ain't for them games. Herb Digital out. See, my old man's got a problem. Lives by the bottle, that's the way it is. Said his body's too old for working. Said his body's too young to look like his.
The royal couple paid their respects at the tomb of the unknown soldier. It's not Memorial Day in Canada, but they did that, followed by a Royal Canadian Air Force flyby, and a 21-gun salute while they made an inspection of the guard, which included the dragoons, before heading to the Senate for the throne speech. And in recent months, the king has been showing his support for Canada, wearing his medals on his chest. Well, Canada's military has had many problems and neglect over recent years, but the new Minister of Defence, David McGuinty, plans to put Canada on track to exceed our NATO defence spending target before 2030, because meeting this moment requires urgency, clarity, and resolve. And they are speeding up the acquisition and procurement of equipment, modernizing the recruitment process, giving all CAF members a well-deserved raise, building new on-base housing, and improving access to doctors, mental health services, and childcare. Mark Carney stated, "Our sovereignty faces the greatest threats in generations. The world is becoming more divided and dangerous. This plan helps ensure that Canada is strong at home and abroad." And while the Tangerine Tyrant claimed Canada asked to be included in the Golden Dome concept, Carney says it's just one of the options we're looking at as part of our defense.
We are conscious that we have an ability, if we so choose, to complete the Golden Dome with investments and partnership. And it's something that we are looking at, and something that has been discussed at a high level, but not sure one negotiates on this. These are military decisions.
Donald Trump's proposal for a Golden Dome defense system. He wants Canada to take part. Carney said, "Yeah, we'll talk about it." Is it wise to? Isn't this sleeping with the enemy?
I think he has to be there. I think we cannot have the U.S. have any kind of defense system for the continent, frankly, where we're not a part of that. I also think it's a priority for the U.S. president. It's actually a smart policy decision, even if we can argue it's Trump and the name is ridiculous. So for Carney so early in his mandate to take a pass, to me, would really sour that relationship. I also think that may be part of the reason why I don't agree with the delayed budget, but if they're going to do it and they're going to have to pay money for a Golden Dome, that may be a really big line item in the next budget.
Yes.
That is a challenge. And I think that even though it will be a big line item in the next budget, one of the things Carney needs to do is to do it differently, to engage different people if they're going to go ahead with it. And this is an opportunity for him to really signal his values, engaging the unusual suspects, Indigenous groups, often marginalized groups, to be a part of the conversation. We cannot protect the North and decide that this is going to be something that's just done unilaterally. It has to be where he displays his values within his budget, but also within his actions on the ground.
Can't consistently rely on the U.S. to protect this
100%.
country.
Our government is planning to partner with Australia in developing the over-the-horizon radar technology that will provide early warning radar coverage for the Arctic. These radar systems' long-range surveillance and threat tracking capabilities will detect and deter threats across the north. Also, the F-35s jets we were going to buy are also on the table, and we're looking at alternatives such as the Swedish-made Saab Gripen or the Typhoon Eurofighter jets used by British, German, Spanish, and Italian forces. Last week, a delegation of mainly Democrat U.S. senators came to Ottawa in an effort of goodwill, but they left without making any progress, or much. And worse, their ambassador, Pete Hoostra, told us we should just get over the 51st state comments.
First out of the gate is the ambassador to Canada, Mr. Pete Hoostra, who's telling Canada to, quote, get over it, in terms of us being upset that the President of the United States said we weren't a real country, said that our border doesn't really exist, and threatened to break us economically so that we would be forced to beg to join the United States. Pete says Donald's way beyond that. Meg is not interested in that anymore. So it's up to us whether or not we still want to hold a grudge. Well, I don't quite trust you, Pete, on this, because just this past week, Donald Trump's doofus in charge of the FBI, Kash Patel, made statements that Canada is not only a serious threat of flooding the United States with fentanyl, which is patently untrue, but he's now claiming, as FBI director, that Canada is the source of terrorism. Not just a few terrorists, hundreds of terrorists flooding over the border. So you see the method of disinformation and lies that are still coming out of Washington. Now, Kash Patel made those comments as U.S. senators showed up in Canada, telling us that the healing has begun. Now, I know why they came cap in hand to Ottawa, because our boycott is having a huge impact on them. So they're coming to us, asking us to be nice to them. Well, it's not up to us to be nice to them. Their president has threatened our country. So if they want the healing to begin, they need to go talk to the gangster from Mar-a-Lago and tell him to get his act together. Because I want to go back to our ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoostra, and just put him in perspective. I'm not going to talk about his politics, which are pretty extreme, the fact that he was a founding member of the Tea Party caucus. I want to talk about his record on international relations. When George Bush was trying to create a narrative to justify the illegal invasion of Iraq, Pete Hoostra was one of his big cheerleaders, promoting all kinds of falsehoods about weapons of mass destruction. And even after the weapons of mass destruction lie had been exposed, Hoostra continued to hold press conferences making false claims that they were finding weapons that simply did not exist. In 2007, he made a number of outrageous claims about the Iranian nuclear capacity, which were proven false. He then started to make a number of anti-Muslim conspiracy claims, so much so that CNN gave him what they called the 4 Pinocchios Award. That's not all that impressive of a track record, Pete, on international affairs.
Canada also aims to expand its diplomatic footprint globally with new embassies and more diplomats and more regional experts, especially in Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
For decades, Canada's foreign policy was like a well-worn path. Predictable partnerships with the United States, United Kingdom, and European allies. But something fundamental shifted in recent years. As the world became more multipolar and traditional power structures began to crack, Canada realized it needed to diversify its diplomatic portfolio. This wasn't just about being trendy or politically correct. It was about survival in a changing world. When the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the fragility of global supply chains, when climate change demanded worldwide cooperation, and when economic power began shifting eastward and southward, Canada faced a choice: stick to the old playbook or write a new one. The answer was clear. Canada chose to cast a wider net, and the results are fascinating. Canada's engagement with the Global South is multifaceted, encompassing diplomatic initiatives, development assistance, and strategic partnerships. One notable example is Canada's Africa Strategy, launched in March 2025. This comprehensive plan aims to drive economic prosperity, security, and fairness for both Canadians and Africans. It aligns with the African Union's Agenda 2063 and focuses on diversifying markets, improving supply chain resilience, enhancing peace and security, and promoting local benefits in Africa. But what does this actually look like on the ground? Take Ghana, for instance. Canada isn't just sending aid, it's building genuine partnerships. Canadian mining companies are working with Ghanaian firms to develop sustainable extraction practices. Canadian universities are collaborating with the University of Ghana on climate research. And Canadian tech companies are helping digitize Ghana's financial sector. This isn't charity, it's smart business. Ghana gets expertise and investment, while Canada gains access to new markets and resources. It's a win-win that traditional aid models often failed to achieve. In the Indo-Pacific region, Canada recognizes the area's growing importance, encompassing 40 economies and over 4 billion people. The Indo-Pacific strategy emphasizes the need for Canada to engage more deeply with this dynamic region, which is rapidly becoming the global center of economic activity. By fostering relationships with countries in the Indo-Pacific, Canada seeks to ensure national security, economic prosperity, and the promotion of democratic values. Vietnam is a perfect example of this new approach. Once viewed primarily through the lens of Cold War history, Vietnam is now seen as a crucial economic partner. Canadian agricultural technology is helping Vietnamese farmers increase yields while reducing environmental impact. Meanwhile, Vietnamese students are flocking to Canadian universities, creating people-to-people connections that will last for generations. Trade between Canada and ASEAN countries has grown by 45% since 2020, while investment flows have doubled. These aren't just statistics. They represent jobs in Toronto and Vancouver, opportunities in Manila and Jakarta, and a more interconnected world. Here's where it gets really interesting. Canada's international assistance plays a crucial role in building these alliances. In the 2023-24 fiscal year, Canada reported total international assistance of $12.3 billion, with $10.1 billion qualifying as official development assistance. This funding supports humanitarian assistance, health, education, food security, climate action, gender equality, economic development, human rights, and democracy.
Well, the gilded goon to our south, they claim it's the golden age for America, but right now Canada wears the crown of democracy, and we are not amused by fascist tyrants, dictators, and oligarchs. We hold the cards, and it's a royal flush. Stay tuned for more on Political Drain Canadian Edition.
Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, and with solidarity. We pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind. The kind that moves. But here's the thing. None of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads, it's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works. Follow us on all these things you see here, and our link tree is in the description. Maybe even get some merch.